Hello, fellow law nerds. Welcome to another episode of Boom Lawyered, a Rewire News Group podcast hosted by the legal journalism team, half of which is going to Paris in 1 week exactly to go see Beyonce. Bzz, bzz, bitches. I'm Imani Gandy, Rewire News Group's editor-at-large.
And I'm Jess Piccolo, Rewire News Group's executive editor. Rewire News Group is the one and only home for expert repro journalism that inspires you to support your teammates who are going to Paris, even if you are stuck in the States. And the Boom Lawyered podcast is part of that mission. So a big thanks to our subscribers and a welcome to our new listeners and viewers. You know, Imani, I was just reminiscing the other day, and I mean, do you remember the halcyon days when our biggest complaints around abortion rights were things like the quote-unquote Woman's Right to Know Act?
Yeah.
Those, you know, that legislation that would impose a whole host of paternalistic conditions on people seeking abortions.
Yeah, and then there were the trap laws. You remember the trap laws? Remember how outraged we used to get about trap laws? It was so adorable. And those mandatory ultrasound laws. Oh, we used to get so mad about those too. So mad. Well, today, folks, we are taking a trip to the Wayback Machine, courtesy of North Carolina Republicans who passed a secret bill that restricts abortion and could cause chaos when it comes to abortion access in the South and Southeast. A secret bill they didn't even bother to hold a hearing on because, get this, you'll love this, they said they already knew what Democrats' response to the bill would be. I mean, what? We were going to call you all, but we know what you all are going to say. You love abortion. We hate abortion. You kill babies. We don't kill babies. So why bother? Nice, thriving democracy you got there, North Carolina.
Love it. Love it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This new bill in North Carolina that bans abortion at 12 weeks has a prohibition on quote unquote eugenics abortion, which we know you love, Imani. And imposes all sorts of unnecessary regulations on clinics and hoops to jump through for patients.
We're also going to talk about Republicans being anti-democratic rats, hiding in the shadows in the dead of night, engaging in procedural fuckery to get this bill passed.
Procedural fuckery, that's our favorite.
That's what they're engaging in. So, first thing we're going to talk about, the abortion ban. This bill in North Carolina is a disaster. It's called SB 20. And it's a monster of a bill. It bans abortion at 12 weeks. The current ban on abortion in North Carolina is 20 weeks. Now, this bill's real dumb because it doesn't say what the 20-week gestation ban is based on, right? Like, if it's fertilization or is it LMP, last menstrual period? If it's 12 weeks LMP, then that means that the ban is really a 10-week abortion ban, right? Because you conceive and then 2 weeks passes, you don't get your period, and I'm with child. Because that's how it happens. When you find out you're pregnant, you go, I'm with child. But if it's post-fertilization, then it's a 14-week ban, not a 12-week ban. So
I was promised there would be no math, Imani.
I mean, I don't know. Look, let me just say that I bet it's 12 weeks LMP. Because that would make it a 10-week abortion ban, and that would line up with the medication abortion cutoff. So That's what I think it is. But in cases of rape or incest, abortion is still available up to 20 weeks, which if it's LMP is actually 22 weeks, but if it's fertilization, it's actually 18 weeks.
Again, with the math. Imani, you're killing me with the math this morning. What is going on? That's the least of our problems with this bill, right? Is the fucking math.
Fucking math.
This bill does have an exception for rape and incest, but it doesn't say anything about how a doctor is supposed to know whether a pregnancy is a result of rape or incest. So, you know, someone's going to have to self-report there. And I bet they can't wait to find a person that they can accuse of lying about rape in order to get an abortion so that they can have an excuse to ban it, even in cases of rape or incest. Because you know what they say, Imani.
Bitches be lying. Bitches be lying.
You know, bitches be lying. We just love ourselves some abobos, and if we can't get them without a rape or an incest allegation, then we're just gonna make it up, because that's what we do.
Yep.
Oh, God. So the bill also has an exception for fetal anomalies.
Okay.
At the same time, the bill has a Down syndrome ban, right? Which says that you cannot get an abortion if it says that a physician can't perform an abortion if the reason that the abortion is being sought is because of a Down syndrome diagnosis. So that's confusing and contradictory, because a Down syndrome diagnosis is a fetal anomaly. And so can you or can you not get an abortion? Maybe figure it out.
Ugh.
Along with the Down syndrome ban, the bill includes a sex selection ban, which means, that's that old racist nonsense, this racist trope about how AAPI people, Asian American Pacific Islander people, are freaking coming to this country and just throwing girl babies off of cliffs. Because you know how Asian American women, they hate girl babies. They just bash them over the head with a rock and throw them off a cliff like they did in Sparta. I mean, that shit's not happening. It's not happening. There are studies that show that it's not happening. There are studies that show that Asian American women in this country actually have girl babies about the same level they have boy babies. They're not throwing them off of like Mount Rainier or whatever.
Oh my God.
It's so ridiculous. But here's my favorite bit. My favorite bit.
Yes.
The race selective ban.
Ugh.
Because that means that a physician cannot perform an abortion on a person who is seeking an abortion because they're concerned that their baby might be black. And I have serious questions about this, because I'm pretty sure every black person, every person of color who walks into an OB-GYN knows that their baby is going to be at least a skosh black.
Just a
skosh, right? And then that leads to the inevitable conclusion that this is really a race selective ban for racist ass white people, right?
Exactly.
If Jim Bob down in Mississippi's, little girl Becky Ann had sex with the hot black varsity football player, got knocked up, well, little Jim Bob doesn't want his brilliant white daughter having a black baby, so we're going to go and get abortions because the baby's going to be black. This is not on black women. We know our babies are going to be black. God damn it.
I did not see that episode of Friday Night Lights. Sorry.
Oh, Coach Taylor.
Oh, gosh. It's wild to be talking about these kinds of restrictions, because truly they are from like lifetimes ago, including another provision that we like to call bias counseling, what the aunties call informed consent, because we live in a world with them where up is down and black is white and words no longer have meaning, Imani, right?
Yeah.
It also revives a reviled regulation that we were joking about a little earlier, but is actually really just gross, which is the forced ultrasounds. And this requires an ultrasound by a physician before a person can get their abortion. Like, just to torture them for funsies.
Good times. So this bill is much more than a 12-week, 14-week, 10-week ban. We're not sure which.
A too many maths ban.
Exactly, a too many maths ban. But a lot of outlets are reporting it as such. But it's really critical to understand that I would say probably more so than the gestational ban, the bill has huge constitutional implications because of the First Amendment. Huge constitutional implications. And that's what we're going to talk about. The bigger issue isn't the abortion ban itself. It's the First Amendment violations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah, I do too. Sucks.
North Carolina is going to end up forcing a fight at the Supreme Court about doctors' First Amendment rights.
Okay, now wait. Let me just play devil's advocate here a little bit. Why? Why can't Governor Roy Cooper just veto it, right? He's a Democrat.
Yeah, he can. He's promising to. He's campaigning to. But the thing is, Republicans in North Carolina have a supermajority, so they can easily override that veto. But here's the thing, and this is going to be such a tell. Cooper needs one Republican.
One. Just the one.
Just one? Can one of you just do something?
One of you act like you have some home training, please. Jesus Christ.
So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, and it seems like there might be a few who are pliable, but ultimately, if Republicans do anything well, it is stick together in the name of restricting abortion rights. So I am skeptical, but keep the pressure on. I mean, who knows, right?
Okay. So Republicans are probably going to override the veto, is what you're
Yeah,
saying. But maybe not
probably.
if we can get one person to act right.
But you know.
But that's unlikely.
Yeah.
So let's go back to what we were originally talking about, the First Amendment. What were you saying about the First Amendment?
Okay, so, remember way back in 2014, Imani, the good old days of 2014. Like, how can we say that 2014
the
was the
good old days, right?
That's how far we've fallen,
so
right?
Sad.
When our only concern were those trap laws and waiting periods and, this is so sweet. Undue burdens.
Oh, undue burdens.
Remember undue burdens?
Oh, I miss a good undue burden argument. Oh, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, we hardly knew ye. R.I.P.
Oh my gosh, right? Okay, so that's, I'm setting the table here. That's the time frame we're in. Back when we used to be able to argue about things like undue burdens. Well, in that time frame, a little further back, 2011, North Carolina had passed a mandatory ultrasound law.
I distinctly remember this period of time, 2011, right? That's about the time you and I became friends on Twitter. We were just starting to notice each other, being like, "Hey, girl, how you doing? Hey, girl, how you doing? You like abortion?
Legal practice sucks.
Yeah, let's get out of this shit." But like,
I love that we were both just shimmying too on that.
Yeah, shimmering. Private practice blows. But, it was right around the time that I was thinking about leaving private practice and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And it was right when the Tea Party explosion happened. All those bills started pouring out of state legislatures. Yep. And I decided I'm going whole hog into repro. And mandatory ultrasound laws were sweeping the nation and causing outrage. At the time, a lot of people were calling them essentially state-sanctioned rape bills because they would force, in some cases, a doctor to use a transvaginal ultrasound wand, essentially inserting something into you in order to determine whatever the fuck they think they need to determine, which is nothing because the procedure is unnecessary, right? Like, absolutely unnecessary.
I totally remember these fights. I mean, it's wild to think that our friendship and our professional relationship was forged in the fires of those early mandatory ultrasound battles. Because they really, truly were. Right? And like, bonkers opinions from the Fifth Circuit about having to drive the long, flat roads between clinics.
But the roads, remember it wasn't Edith Jones who said it wasn't an undue burden because the roads are flat and uncongested.
And you could drive fast.
Right. You could drive 500 miles at like 85 miles an hour. No biggie. Jesus Christ. And those were the arguments we used to love. I would love to have an argument about an uncongested flat highway right about now.
Give me an unhinged Edith Jones opinion compared to anything Maddie K puts out these days.
Oh my God, no kidding.
All right?
Jesus
so
Christ.
Anyway, back in 2014, in a case called Stewart v. Kamsitz, and this is 3 years after North Carolina passed that forced ultrasound bill, advocates from the Center for Reproductive Rights, ACLU, and PPFA filed a lawsuit challenging that provision. And mandatory ultrasound laws have what's called a speech and display requirement. And this is the First Amendment part. And that requires the physician place the ultrasound image in the patient's view and also read a state-mandated script about the images, even if the patient doesn't want to see it, doesn't want to hear it, wants no part of the procedure. The law, the state, tells the doctor this is what you have to do.
It's trash. Forced ultrasound laws are absolute trash. The purported purpose of these laws, and we have to remember that these laws are based on an Americans United for Life model bill, right? Remember back in the day when those model bills were flying around, it was just Mad Lib bills. Like Republicans were just filling in the blanks and just passing them through. They didn't even read them most of the time. So, the bill was purportedly drafted to ensure that women make an informed choice about whether or not to get an abortion, to promote the patient's physical and psychological health, and to protect a state's interest in protecting life. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. They don't give a shit about the mental health of people because they usually say that mental health is not part of the health exception when they're offering health exceptions to abortion. If you say that you are going to have a mental health crisis of being forced to carry a pregnancy to term, they don't care. They don't care about your psychological health. In reality, though, These laws compel doctors to perform medically unnecessary procedures, which raises the cost of abortion care and imposes additional burdens on the free exercise of bodily autonomy. It's trash.
Trash. And just like the bitches be lying presumption here, there's the presumption that patients don't know what they're doing, right?
Yep.
That literally we just would walk into a doctor's office and be like, I don't know, strap me up. Like,
baby be gone.
It is, trash.
Yeah,
Trash. And though from a legal perspective, also trash and state compelled speech, right? And that's the part where, as I said earlier, the state, in this case, North Carolina, is telling doctors what they have to say. Like, here's a human life inside of you. Well, I don't know if I think that's what's going on, right? Like, here, look at this image, whether you want to or not. Like, I mean, that's functionally putting an anti-choice protester right in the exam room with the patient, right?
Yes. It's so manipulative and gross. It's just...
Yep. And that's exactly it. I mean, their mandatory ultrasound laws attempt to dissuade people from getting an abortion using emotional appeals and manipulation, all right? The thing is, we have data and know that the attempts at this manipulation are almost always unsuccessful. One study demonstrates that patients who view an ultrasound image are not likely to change their mind about going through with the abortion. Because guess what? Folks have thought about what they're doing before they go to the office.
Yeah.
Shocking. I know.
I mean, it's just, there are studies that show that, these forced ultrasound laws are intended to sort of stir up these latent maternal instincts that women naturally have, but which they are somehow suppressing because of societal forces that are telling them to get out of the kitchen and go to work or whatever the hell it is, right? These ultrasounds force pregnant people who've already made a decision to just go through these motions. And it's traumatizing. Like, I remember in connection with specifically the Texas ultrasound, the sonogram law, there was an article, I believe, in the Texas Observer that really went through in detail the traumatic nature of what a particular patient had to go through. It was like a day in the life of this person's, attempt to get an abortion. And it was heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking, particularly if the reason you're seeking the abortion is because of some sort of fetal anomaly. If it's a wanted pregnancy and they're forcing you to look at something that you want to keep, but you have decided not to because of the anomaly or for whatever reason, it's just cruel. It's cruel.
Yeah. And I mean, at its baseline, it erases the idea that pregnant people have any moral agency whatsoever, right? You lose all moral agency once you become pregnant. The inability to make any rational decision on what's best for you and that pregnancy just goes away. Now, back when the federal courts weren't so terrible, there was some good news here. The Fourth Circuit had already taken a look at this case and said, no, this is not okay. This is, this mandatory ultrasound law can't stand. And the antis weren't happy about that. So they filed a petition with the Supreme Court in 2015, and a very different court declined to take up the fight.
Very different
All right.
court. Oh, my God.
So far, the Supreme Court hasn't really spoken on the issue of physicians' First Amendment rights when it comes to things like mandatory ultrasounds here.
And it's getting teed up. Like, if the First Amendment issue doesn't get to the Supreme Court based on ultrasound laws, it very well might get there based on these medication abortion reversal laws, right? Where states are requiring doctors to tell pregnant people that medication abortion can be reversed, when it absolutely cannot. We did an entire episode, which we should link in the show notes, about medication abortion reversals. Do you remember 777? Because it was the fucking guy, George Delgado, who, by the way, is a plaintiff in the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine Miffy lawsuit. Basically, his whole claim about medication abortion being able to be reversed was based on the study with 7 women. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. Back in 2019, a district court judge in North Dakota ruled that doctors could not be forced to tell patients about medication abortion reversal because, quote, the First Amendment protects physicians against laws that compel them to speak against their will. That seems pretty straightforward to me.
It does, but Imani, would it shock you to learn that conservatives are trying to have it both ways on this issue?
Oh my God.
That was an amazing shocked face. Okay. Colorado, our home state, passed a law that says you can't advance abortion reversal as a treatment because it's not proven. So what did conservatives do? They ginnied on up a lawsuit right away based on religious speech grounds, right? And so it's been initially blocked, at least with regard to one clinic. So here we have it, right? An abortion-related First Amendment tee-up. So cool. Great.
So cool.
Super
great.
This is fantastic. Double thumbs up. Because the thing is, given how good conservatives have gotten about gaming the litigation process, thanks in large part to a captured federal judiciary, I can totally see a universe where much, if not all, of this nonsense starts getting decided on the shadow docket.
No,
right?
Not the shadow docket. Dun, dun, dun.
We need like a
yeah, we do. Like a guillotine sound or something. So that's the third thing we're going to talk about today.
Ugh.
Legislating and adjudicating from the shadows. So I am reading an advanced copy of Steve Vladek's book, and it's called, appropriately, Shadow Docket. Dun, dun, dun. Ka-ching. And let me tell you, it's a really great book. I don't read a lot of books. A lot of times people send me their books, and I'm just kind of like, I'll read a couple pages and move on. I blasted through Ellie Mistal's book, and I'm blasting through Steve's book, too, because it's got a lot of really interesting historical facts that I didn't know. It is shocking the amount of power that the Supreme Court has over its however many years, couple hundred years in existence, how much power they have arrogated to themselves. Like, starting off with the very first case, the first case you learn in law school, Marbury versus Madison. That was the case where
baller of the case.
Fucking balls out, Johnny Marshall.
Johnny Marshall.
Coming up blazing hot out of the gates like, you know what, Congress? I know you created us, but guess what we're going to do? We are going to say that we can just review everything you do. I know that hasn't been discussed anywhere, but we're just going to say it. Everything you do, I do it for you? Like, why am I going Bryan Adams? But seriously, everything you do, we are going to take a look at and decide if you can do it or not. That's a baller move, right? Like,
it's a real listen up, motherfuckers.
It really is. It's a peep this shit, motherfuckers. So, so that's how the court got started. It got started just power grabbing, and it's been grabbing power ever since. Now, the modern court is setting agendas on the shadow docket, right? It's not just these emergency applications where, as in the Miffy lawsuit, one party is seeking a stay or seeking to pause a lower court ruling that they don't like, and they're asking the Supreme Court on an emergency basis to take up the issue. Well, what happens in those situations is that you don't get a full briefing of the issues, right? You don't. Right. People got to file briefs. And then court clerks got to read briefs. Sometimes,
what's an associate going to do if they're not writing a brief?
Exactly. And so what happens is these briefs don't get written. Instead, they get a tiny little application, and then the court will rule on this application, and then that signals to other courts what they should be doing without the Supreme Court having to show its work or explain why it did what it did. For example, do you recall the Alabama gerrymandering nonsense, right? When Alabama only had one majority black district, and
we talked about this.
We did. We did a whole episode on it, and people were like, "Hey, maybe we should have two majority black districts." And white folks were like, "No, we don't want to do that." And so the Supreme Court said, "Yeah, we're not going to let you do that. We're just going to go ahead and let you run the election on these racist ass maps." And then what happened? That signaled to, for example, Louisiana. The Louisiana's district court was like, well, I guess we're going to let Louisiana elections run on these racist ass maps because the Supreme Court already said they're not doing anything in Alabama. This is how agendas get set in the shadows. Lack of transparency is the problem.
Yes.
But first, can we talk about Republican shady behavior? Right?
I mean, sure.
Because they legislated they were in the darkness when they were drafting this bill. Just legislating from the shadows. Not good. I mean, they did. Abortion
it turns out, is pretty popular in North Carolina. I mean, it's popular everywhere. People love abortion.
Right.
They really do, you know? I mean, in fact, some recent polling, and Jess Valenti covered this in her newsletter, and she has been great about tracking this legislation. So if you don't already subscribe to it, you should. 60% of North Carolinians support abortion rights.
60%! Right?
That's a solid majority.
Yes.
Solid majority. So Republicans know that. Right? And to circumvent it, they had to make sure that the bill wouldn't have to go through the normal committee hearing process. And so they substituted another unrelated bill for this bill to avoid that typical committee hearing process and basically make sure there wouldn't be any opportunity to amend the bill. So, legislating from the shadows. There was like a whole hot 2-hour notice or something before this was going up.
Yeah. And North Carolinians, the Republicans in North Carolina love to do this. They did this a while back with a motorcycle bill. It was a bill about motorcycle regulations. And then last minute, they just slipped a bunch of anti-abortion shit in there. Like,
they did.
Just low key.
Like, definitely wear a helmet and no abortions for you.
Right. Exactly. And if you're going to wear a helmet, like, it doesn't even make any sense the way they do these things. It's just completely shady. And it's no wonder they have to be so shady about it because the bill is terrible. It's mostly terrible. There's one good thing that it did, and I'm going to shout out our managing editor, Esther Gim, who pointed this out because apparently the bill closes the loophole that says that domestic violence abusers can still get guns. So that loophole has been closed. So that's good. That's like one good thing that this bill does. Everything else is trash, right? It's, as we said in the beginning, it's unclear what the gestational ban is. Is it 10 weeks? Is it 12 weeks? Is it 14 weeks? Nobody knows. And particularly, and Jess Valenti, again, subscribed to Abortion Every Day. It's great. She pointed out in a recent post that Republicans are trying to float this bill as if it's some sort of compromise, right? Like, it's a reasonable compromise. It's not a 6-week ban. It's a 12-week ban. What's the big idea? And, you know, back in the day when we used to care about pre-viability abortion bans, you remember? Pre-viability abortion bans are unconstitutional. I mean, God, we used to love that little ditty, and now it just doesn't even matter anymore. But back in those days, this used to be Republicans' playbook, right? Think of John Kasich, former Republican.
Do I have to?
I mean, no, I mean, but I'm going to talk about him anyway for a minute.
Okay.
You can plug your ears. So John Kasich, a few years back, had 2 bills on his desk, a 20-week ban and a 6-week ban. He decided that he wasn't going to sign the 6-week ban because it was way too extreme. But the 20-week ban, now that sounds reasonable. Although at the time, the 20-week ban was just as unconstitutional as the 6-week ban. But it just sounds better, right? Like, bitch, if you're pregnant at 20 weeks, you got to keep the pregnancy. Like, that's the sort of the zeitgeist, right? Like, if there's something wrong with you, if you're 20 weeks pregnant and you just decide, oh, I don't want this kid anymore, as if that's happening. Yeah, not great, not great. But they're dead focused on this 12-week ban, right? They're dead focused on the 12-week ban and mostly ignoring the reason ban and the targeted regulation of abortion clinics, right? These trap laws.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And as at the Charlotte Observer, reporter Paige Matson notes that a pregnant person in North Carolina already has a bunch of hurdles to overcome, all right? It's not like it's easy breezy getting an abortion anywhere right now, but North Carolina, even as a place that's largely preserved access, there's still a bunch of regulations to go through. For example, a medication abortion requires 3 doctor's visits for reasons, apparently. You know, who knows? North Carolina already has a 72-hour waiting period, and the initial consultation would need to be in person. Currently, they let you do it on the phone. So, you know,
it's not
and
great.
that forced ultrasound requirement.
It's unnecessary, traumatizing, penetrative in some cases, medical procedure. It's just...
Yeah.
And the bill's regulation of clinics is super harsh too, right? In fact, there was a Planned Parenthood lobbyist at the North Carolina General Assembly who said that none of Planned Parenthood's clinics meet the requirements in North Carolina. This is according to a report from WRAL News, right? And so, you know, the trap laws we're talking about stuff like requiring clinics to retrofit themselves to be ambulatory surgical clinics, right? So surgical centers, so that, for example, the hallways have to be a certain length or certain width, so that gurneys can pass each other by in the hallways. But the thing is, in abortion clinics, there are no gurneys.
Right.
There's no gurneys. There are HVAC system requirements in order to be, so that, you can remove viruses and infections and whatnot from the air. There's no viruses when you're getting an abortion. It's particularly when you're getting a medication abortion. They require medication abortion clinics to have large hallways for gurneys.
Right.
It doesn't even make any sense. And these trap laws, right? The trap laws in this North Carolina bill aren't any more valid now that Roe has been overturned than they were before, right?
Right.
But we're in this new era of, anything goes when it comes to abortion rights. So I would expect that every ridiculous bit of legislation that was smacked down as an undue burden over the last decade or so. Remember Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt? Remember how happy we were when Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt came down? I do.
That's my sign.
That's
from
your
the Whole
sign.
Women's Health protest.
Yeah, the sign for the listeners says, "Dear SCOTUS, I had an abortion. Restore abortion access." I mean, God damn it.
Those were the days.
They really were the days. So, every bit of legislation that was smacked down as an undue burden over the last decade, I expect to become roaring back, right? Ambulatory surgical center requirements, admitting privileges. Remember how mad we were about admitting privileges? Remember June Medical Services versus Russo?
I mean, that was the last time I saw you in front of the Supreme Court, Imani.
It really was.
Yeah, last good abortion case to come out of the Supreme Court in our lifetime. I called it.
And it used to be that we could rely on Casey, right? Casey was our friend. The undue burden test was our friend, and now we don't have it anymore because...
Yeah, Dobbs got rid of Casey too.
That's
I mean, we talk about, Dobbs overturning Roe versus Wade, and that's obviously a huge thing, but, overturning Planned Parenthood versus Casey as well is huge because as states now have the ability to regulate or ban outright abortion, we're going to see functionally that there's no limit to what this court will allow states to enact. And let's be honest, North Carolina knows it can't outright ban abortion. So what did it do in this? Because it's so politically unpopular to do so in the state. So what did it do? It Frankensteined together a bill that would functionally have that same effect, but allow conservatives to say, no, we're fine. We're moderates. We didn't ban abortion in the state. Bullshit. But we have to talk about the effect that this bill would have if it goes in and clinics in North Carolina close, because it is an important access point in the South and Southeast. And this is coming at a time when the National Abortion Federation just published their annual report on incidents of harassment and violence against clinics post-Dobbs. And folks, whoo, boy, all I can say is that report is grim.
Yeah.
A couple key points that I want to make that are in there for that, folks may not be aware of. Anti-choice activists are moving to states without abortion bans or states that are more abortion protective to try and harass providers and patients out of care. This absolutely affects North Carolina. The North Carolina legislature behaving like this only puts a bigger target on the back of providers and patients in that state. The uptick of threats after Dobbs has been horrifying. I mean, in abortion protective states, for example, Imani, incidents of stalking were up over 900%.
Did you say 900? 900?
That's a real number, over 900%.
In abortion protective states.
In abortion protective states, because aunties are now going there to try and harass folks out of care. And we have to fold this into the violence with all the other fascist violence that's taking place all over the country for folks, because it's all the same cycle and circle of folks. Yeah. So, but this is really the point I want to make, since there's a possibility of overriding the veto or not. The kind of targeted legislative harassment that we're seeing in North Carolina with this nonsense bill that nobody wants leads to targeted harassment of providers and patients in real life. Mm-hmm. It's a direct line. And after Dobbs, the stakes are just different and more dangerous, and folks should knock it off.
And what concerns me, if you recall, I know you recall, the David DeLayton, oh my God, Planned Parenthood is selling baby part stuff. That was smacked down back in 2015. It's now 2023. I think a campaign like that would be very, very successful given this climate. And that's really concerning because there were a lot of people whose lives were on the line, who had to move homes, who had to hire private security because of this stalkery behavior by this quote unquote, he calls himself a citizen journalist, but really he's just a jackass, harasser, and stalker. So,
I mean, we got the Colorado Springs Planned Parenthood shooting out here as a result of it.
Exactly.
So
exactly. So here's what you need to know about this episode. Let's say you're at a cocktail party and you want to talk about North Carolina and all the fuckery that's going on there. SB 20 is the bill. It's a bill that contains a gestational ban that might be 10 weeks, 12 weeks, or 14 weeks. We don't know because the bill doesn't specify. But it's more than about gestational bans. It's about freedom of speech. It's about physicians' freedom of speech. It's also about Republicans trying to categorize certain abortions as quote unquote eugenics abortion, which that is a line taken directly from Clarence Thomas's Planned Parenthood versus Box opinion. Remember, where he was talking all about Margaret Sanger and eugenics abortions, and Margaret Sanger was like murdering black babies in the basement. I mean, this is the sort of unhinged rhetoric that we get from Republicans. The second thing you need to know is Republicans know that their policies are unpopular, and so they pass this shit in the dead of night without any input from Democrats because they knew what Democrats were going to say.
Yeah.
And finally, be very afraid of this case being adjudicated in the shadows on the shadow docket the same way that it was legislated in the shadows in the General Assembly of North Carolina. We are in dire times. The place we're in now in 2023 is so different than where we were in 2014, 2015, 2016. And
different.
And I'm not going to get into a whole rant about it. I would just ask.
No, you're not.
I would just ask people to think about those things, right? Just have a good think about it is all. And if in the course of having a good think, you want to talk to me or you want to talk to Jess, you can find me on Twitter at Angry Black Lady. I'm probably being screamed at right now by a whole manner of people. You can find Jess on Twitter at Hegemami. She's probably being yelled at the Daily Mail for being a quote unquote woke journalist. And you should and can and must follow Rewire News Group on Twitter, on Instagram, and on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also, make sure you check out our Instagram Reels because Garnet Henderson, who was my guest co-host on the pod, was it last week, 2 weeks ago? We talked about the Comstock. It was a great episode. A little bit of Comstock action. She's very good at explaining this stuff. She's been keeping up on all of the birth control pill that might be going over the counter soon, which is amazing. So for you Gen X 90s stans, Garnet explains it all, right? Just go to Instagram and check out Garnet. She's fabulous. And on that note, the billboard. We've got that billboard in Memphis, Tennessee. We are so excited. There was someone in our Facebook group that said that they were driving out of their way to go check out the Memphis billboard. And I think that is amazing. And we love you for it.
Love it.
Please check it out.
If you see it, send us pictures. We want to see it in the wild.
We do.
Folks.
Tag us on Twitter, please. We love it. And on that note, what are we going to do, Jess?
We're going to see you on the tubes, folks.
We're going to see you on the tubes, folks.